I'm Chris Conti, tucked away in a rural corner of northern Vermont.
They're really beautiful.
Where a quintessential part of the landscape here is starting to show its age.
You can see how much stress there is in this. This is oak.
That's Joe Poston. That thing in his hand is an old wooden bolt from a covered bridge. His company, Wright Construction, is one of just a few that is certified to restore and rehabilitate these iconic New England structures whose histories date back to the early 1800s.
They were all made by different farmers, really, so each bridge has its own little quirks.
While their aesthetics are stunning, these bridges also serve as lifelines, connecting a patchwork of rural communities. But after 200 years, many are in desperate need of repair.
They don't make them anymore. They don't put covered bridges up as bridges because they're kind of impractical.
Over the past 2 decades, Joe and his colleagues have rebuilt dozens of covered bridges, multi-million-dollar complex projects. While working to keep the historic qualities of these bridges intact, they are also trying to update this critical piece of rural infrastructure so it can handle vehicles that weigh a lot more than they did back in 1800.
Some of the work we do increases the weight rating on the bridges. So you've got bigger vehicles now. Maybe the town wants to be able to get their ambulance across the bridge, so you have to increase the weight rating. So you add bigger timbers to the bridge to get that.
And nationwide, there's about a $200 billion backlog in funding needed for improvements and repairs to this country's rural transportation system.
It's the lack of investment over many, many years.
Andrew Walmsley studies rural infrastructure. He says crumbling roads and bridges across this country's smaller communities often makes it harder for farmers to transport food and other goods.
Anything that delays that, impedes that, increases cost, creates a challenge.
There is some hope on the horizon for America's rural bridges. The infrastructure bill passed last year allocated $40 billion for bridge repair and replacement.
Hopefully that investment will not be immediate and overnight to clear that backlog, but we can start chipping away at that and states can start making those improvements that are needed.
They're a real integral part of the road system.
For now, it's up to people like Joe Poston to keep this iconic, important piece of America infrastructure standing so that these pieces of history don't become it as well.
It's an old technology that works and Vermont sticks with it.
In Windsor County, Vermont, I'm Chris Conti.
Some of our nation's rivers are known for their beauty. Others are known for their pollution. That's why the infrastructure law is pumping big money into cleanup efforts nationwide, and Joe St. George shows us some of the work already underway.
It's that time of year when the water starts to appeal to us all. If you're in the south, it's beginning to get hot. If you're in the north, the long winter is ended. And that is why it's the perfect time to get a status update on the state of our country's waterways.
A lot of people see this as an industrial river.
It's why we met up today with Rob Costco in a part of the country you might not think of when it comes to kayaking. We're on the Black River near Lake Erie, and while it may look like any old river well, we'll let Rob tell you its nickname.
This river was known as the River of Fish Tumors.
Not every body of water in our country has a great reputation. Many industrial cities have struggled for years with pollution. In fact, all of these rivers around the Great Lakes are still considered areas of concern by the federal government.
Because of the rain episodes, you got a lot that's washing up.
While you may think that might scar a community from ever wanting to go near the water, Rob says something exciting is happening. Interest is back.
I view our river as a tourist river. You've got kayaking, you've got stand-up paddleboarding, you've got boating.
Why the optimism? Well, he says one reason is the Great Lakes Restoration Initiative, which is getting a big boost in funding. President Biden recently announced $1 billion from the bipartisan infrastructure law will soon help fund more cleanup efforts, such as removing trash and dredging sediment.
There are days, here when the river turns brown or green that I wouldn't recommend that anybody go out in the river and kayak. It is pretty disgusting.
Mike Panuski is an engineer who helps oversee the Maumee River in Toledo, which is also an area of concern. He says the good news is that Republicans and Democrats are beginning to seriously fund river cleanup efforts. The bad news, $1 billion is nowhere near what's needed.
It's not enough, but it does provide a good down payment. The issue is that the majority of the polluters that caused a lot of these issues, they're long gone.
If you live elsewhere and are wondering why the Great Lakes is getting all this help, don't worry. In Florida, over $1 billion has been allocated to revitalize the Everglades. In Virginia and Maryland, over $40 million to improve the Chesapeake Bay. Denver's South Platte River is receiving $350 million, and along the Colorado River Basin in the west, over $250 million will help protect the ever-shrinking water supply.
There we go.
Back along the Black, Rob says it's a great time to love rivers. The next few years, he believes, will be transformational.
They all have such unique dynamics.
In Lorain County, Ohio, I'm Joe St. George.
Where a shift to wind energy could save rural towns. Next on The Race.